I have to capture your enthusiasm for the pack day event.
No, the Pinot's Palette was such a fun event. We held it out at Garay Winery in Livermore, in the beautiful, wine country there, and not the Napa, but it's the one that's one valley down. And we had our presentation in the morning where we informed everybody in the company what was going on and sort of our vision and our accomplishments. And the theme was painting the future, and the
Oh, I
concept around that was leaving COVID behind and let's paint a new picture.
okay,
Let's
I love that. I love that theme.
So that was
Wait, did you come up with that theme or did the Pinot painter people come up with that?
well, we the first step was to pick the activity and the location, and then as we did that, then the MG group got together and said, "Hey, what do we want to do?" And paint the future was one of the brainstorms that came. Probably I don't remember exactly whose idea it was, but I think it was probably a combination of Laurent and the marketing team, and so from then there we went and had a selection. So we chose a beach sunset scene with I think if you viewed it, why you really could view it as a sunrise, right? The sun is rising.
Ooh,
So
I like it. Totally
yeah,
like it.
so it's super fun.
I
But
thought
anyway,
maybe that was your view of the future, like retiring to a beach somewhere.
oh, well, that always is though. I mean, it was my year, so I got to pick I had the final say on the picture. So of
Okay,
course, absolutely. As I always tell people, it goes with the gold chains and the olive complexion, right? I
exactly.
belong somewhere on a beach somewhere, and I
Totally.
fortunately get to spend time doing that throughout the year and all that. How you been?
I'm good. I know. I feel like I got to hang out, I mean, a little bit like a walk back from karaoke with you at the
You know
conference.
what though? In the context of a conference, that serendipitous moment, if that's what we get, that's what we get, right? And that was super
I
fun. It
know.
was
That
it was a
was
super
such a
fun
fun
evening.
night. Totally.
And the walk back was just part of that captured time with friends, and no heavy itinerary on it, and it was all
Thank
good.
goodness somebody thought it was time to leave and that there should be a group walk back to the hotel at that point.
you know a couple of years of experience teaches us that being the last one out really is
Never a good plan.
it's just never it's too much fun to feel good all day than it is to stay out all night. So there's a blend.
Yeah,
There's the
exactly.
balance. It's called experience.
Okay, speaking of experience, Scott, you just hit 20 years. Is that right? Did I see that on your LinkedIn or are you at 19?
Right around 20, I think.
Right around 20. I know. Okay. And I related to that, I was like, when was the last time Scott was on the podcast? I always think it's been more recent than it has. Do you know what year it was? Did you also look at this or do you just know it?
I don't know it, but I'm going to assume it was pre-COVID and it was early on in your podcasting. I was one of the original ones, I
You
think.
were one of the original ones. And I like was sure I'd had you on since it was 2015,
Oh wow.
right?
That's almost embarrassing for both of us.
Exactly. That's what I thought. I was like, you're kidding me. Because I had this huge list of questions and I was like, did we talk about this last time? No, we did not. So yeah, we need to have you on more often.
Congrats on the podcast and just all the training courses and the just everything. Your whole following of people that consult with you and you give advice to, and just tip of the cap. I mean, super fun. I've known you all
Oh,
these years and been
but I
your
was
partner in other ventures, and now watching this from the sidelines is super special.
well, I feel like right back at you because you guys are also off and running. I mean, like
Yeah.
20 years and now these might be the most exciting yet to come.
We It's funny. I look forward to kind of sharing that with you and just
Yeah,
going back and forth on what we see out there.
I know.
Super
Okay,
super
well,
exciting times, right?
I feel like
We come
you
from
guys,
the most challenging time ever to
yes.
some of the most optimistic and exciting times. So
I mean, so much has changed since 2015. You were number 11, and we're on this. I think our number's a little off in our draft mode. Two in the 270s. So I know.
oh,
Well, and I wasn't weekly super consistent at the beginning. A couple years ago, I was like, we're weekly. We're gonna know, like, rain, snow, hail, or whatever the post office motto is. We're posting every week. Okay, so since it's been so long, I was like, everybody's gonna know who Scott is because he was just on. No. So okay, give us your who is, I mean, well, I'll start. You fill in the blanks. So you and Laurent have been doing this for a long time, and I can't remember your origin story. So you have to like briefly, because we have so much to get into, mention how you got started. But when you guys got started, it was executive suites, and nobody thought this model existed. Anybody in it today thinks we just got started. You guys have been doing this for a long time and run an incredible company that's still growing. So that's why I can't wait to hear, what's next. So you did this for a long time. You saw co-working coming. You were the president of the Global Workspace Association when I first got involved. So leadership roles in the industry, always looking at kind of what's next, which I'm excited to hear about. Made it through COVID. I'm sure we could do lots and lots of debriefs about how you guys manage that, because I think you have an incredible leadership team. And we need to get you guys out on stages more often. You also were on a panel at the recent GWA conference in Frisco. Yeah. So you guys have been doing this for a long time. How many locations now?
19. We're going to go to
19.
20 towards the end of the year. We're opening up Midtown Phoenix as we get into the new year. So that's starting.
So Vegas, Phoenix. So you've been very strict Bay Area for a long time. Bay Area slash like Bakersfield.
Mostly NorCal, Sacramento. We've got a good footprint down in Sacramento. Reno's doing quite well and survived. Actually, one of our better performers during COVID, given the influx of people coming from California into the Reno basin.
Right.
That was a good performer. Went down into Vegas. That's up and running. We're going to go into Midtown Phoenix. Candidly, we're looking to expand with landlords that understand us and understand the concept. And one of the things we'll get into in a little bit is sort of, the most exciting part of what we see moving forward is our supplier side. And the willingness of, when I say suppliers, for anyone that knows sort of at a macroeconomic level, it's our landlords. It's the building owners, and their mindset, knowledge, and understanding, both as we went into COVID and now, the great thing coming out of COVID, and we could talk for hours on the bad things, and I prefer just to turn the page. Is the disruption in the workforce and the power shift to the consumerization and the employee being able to say when and where. And there's a tug of war going on right now. We know that there's the large tech companies that really want everybody back in, and all the employees said no. And so we find a tug of war, and we're going to go through a mild recession from what I think most people can understand. We're probably already in one. There's layoffs at certain companies. There's hiring at other companies. So it's going to go through a period of time, 6 months, 12 months, maybe the next couple of years. Where that tug of war will continue, but I think ultimately the employee wins, because by the employee winning, everybody will win in the long run, right? The quality of life is important as we evolve into we're well mature into an information society, and we want to work hard, and then we want to play hard, and sometimes logistics gets in the way of that, and so we don't want to always be stuck in Silicon Valley or downtown San Francisco or downtown Manhattan. We want to be out closer to where we're going to go recreate or be with our family, and more affordable. For some people, it's an economic decision. They just simply get a much better quality of life by getting out of the big cities. I think there'll be an arbitrage on that in some of the cities. I know in San Francisco, housing is still really, really expensive, but my belief is that office space is going to become a lot more affordable in the next 12 to 36 months. As we learned at GWA, with all the leases expiring in the next 12 to 24 months across the nation, really, there'll be an inflection point there where they're going to have to start lowering prices and to get people back in and refill the cities.
So I'm curious, what your sentiment is on. So Vegas, you're downtown.
Yeah, we're downtown.
Yeah, and Phoenix, Midtown. You mentioned
Midtown, not downtown, Midtown.
Okay.
Competitors in the area are full, doing well, and did well during COVID. So it's a Midtown Phoenix pulls from all the greater Phoenix suburbs into the downtown and Midtown area for people to come to a centralized place to do business. And we will be the best product in a very good location with a very good landlord partner right there in the heart of it. It's going to be a brand new build out, which I think that's one of the real exciting things is when we're finding the right supplier who's willing to write the crooked check for the tenant improvements. I mean, in parts of our world, we're going between $100 and $120 a square foot now, which still is cheaper than some corporate build outs, but a lot more expensive than
Yep.
just spec space. But it's all glass, it's all LED lighting, it's open space and privates. It's more smaller private offices, but not tiny boxes. That we have some single private, little small ones, but still that 2-person, some 3s. Much less team rooms. That's not our bread and butter.
Yep.
Industrious can have that, and other suppliers we work can do those probably better than we can, or better than we're willing to. We're not willing to take the risk on those. They're great when they're leased at high margins, and then really a lot
really
of
bad when they're not. Yeah.
So that's not really what we're going to cater to. A little bit more. Our open space is becoming more creative with respect to it. Just can completely go from a work area to an event area. A lot of operators have done that in the past. We're getting better at it. Our Vegas is just a gem. I mean, that design came out great, and we're extrapolating that design into Phoenix. We did a little bit of it in J Street, downtown Sacramento, but the build, you have to kind of also live with the building that you're given. That footprint's the event space is good, but not quite as good as say Vegas and Phoenix will be. So, but that's all electronic locks, all new lighting, bright and finish, everything's new. And I think that the consumer, as you come out of COVID, and for many parts of the country, they're well out of COVID. For other parts of the country, they feel like they're just coming out of it, and that's a societal thing as to how COVID was handled by different parts of the country and different parts of the world. For that, clean, new, and nice is going to be attractive, right? So as we turn over some of our older portfolio and our older buildings and leases expire, and we can either redo them or move substantially similar, stay in the market, but get new space. It's no different than when we go to a hotel. We want clean, we want nice. If you think about one more piece of the COVID, I guess we're going to talk. I guess it's going to happen, right?
You get right. We'll try to leave it behind, but
stories. But think about this, right? Are you bummed that when you go to a restaurant now that the table and chairs in the bar area is typically wiped down on a very regular basis, and that the restrooms are cleaner, and that just generally functioning in society and shared spaces is just cleaner? That's what it's like. It should have always been that way.
Yeah.
But hey, so what? We take that as a positive, and let's continue those habits. And so it's the same with our spaces. People want nice, new, clean, fresh, bright.
Totally.
They want to feel energized. They want to get out of that bedroom. They want to get out of that claustrophobic feeling, and away we go.
So, but that's been positive for you because, when you're in a location like Palo Alto for decade, how long were you in Palo Alto?
We were there, I want to say 15 years, and the build out was at least 10 to 15 before we were there. It was, by the end of the life cycle, when the lease finally ended and it got redeveloped.
Yeah, but you can't get a landlord to help you with TI, right? You have to. I mean, it's like so challenging.
It's really not every landlord's going to be for us.
Yeah.
Or for flex.
Right.
I think as your other podcast partner Gio would know, some landlords are flex excited and flex willing.
Yeah.
And they can see the longer term coupon that they can clip, and they can ride the ups and downs with creative management contracts, participating leases, retail approach to leases in a commercial office. I think those guys are going to win, but it all comes down to what their investors and capital structure is, and willingness and risk tolerance and all that. Every asset has got a different set of circumstances. But yes, in Palo Alto, it was a mom and pop, and moms and pops typically don't want to write the $100 square foot, without it being collateralized to, $80 right. They don't want to take any risk. Even if they've had you for 15 years, they're still really nervous to do that. And so that actually building got sold, and we did close down that location. But by the way, in the heart of Palo Alto, a phenomenal location. It took
which you guys ran, amazingly, even without the bright, clean, new. So, but it's probably fun for you to now be, it's easier to find the landlords that are flex friendly. It
really is, and I think. When you and I are kicking around some ideas about, things we could catch up on, what am I most excited about as we move forward from here, whether it's the next 5 years or 20 years, it's two things. And they really kind of they work together. The two things are the suppliers, the willingness of new and existing landlords that we've got relationships with, and that other operators have relationships, whether you're a single operator, or two locations, or 80 locations, as one of our friends has. their willingness to understand that flex is a part of the future, that it's been good to them in the past. Yes, it's not perfect. We do, this is the economic 101 for everybody. We buy long and we sell short. Anybody that knows economics knows you buy long and it goes up, it's good. It stays flat, not bad. It goes down. And when it goes way down, you can't service $100 a square foot lease if the prevailing under market goes to 65. It's just very, very difficult. Maybe you can, but at the end of the day, those things become difficult. So that is where the lease structures are changing. Partnerships are entering. Participating leases with minimum performances are coming in. Profit sharings are coming in. No two deals are identical, but there are some substantial similarities because underwriting still requires a lease in many cases. And so you find ways to structure a creative lease that gives the landlord what he needs for his lender or his finance partners. And then you give them something that enables you to ride the ups and downs. And really in the long term, if you think about the investment that goes into our spaces and how we can ebb and flow a little bit, they're buying the building to underwrite and be part of that underlying real estate risk. They like the location, they like the block, they like the building, they like the long-term potential. Well, now they got to get tenants that ride that with them. But if they're buying long and they're expecting their building to appreciate, then they should be willing to do that, and many are. And the flip side, the other thing I really am super excited about moving forward is the reason that the what I just mentioned is happening on the supplier side is because the demand curve changed. We now have it. I wasn't very long ago when you go to a cocktail party, you do what?
Right.
You got this office.
I know you spent a lot of years.
And then it's a virtual office, right?
Right.
Now it's like, oh yeah, that's what Scott does. That's what his company does, and so it's totally different. So and that is because of the I think a few things. One is the disruption of people wanting to work more flexibly. And we have to acknowledge that Regis was the first to do it on a broad marketing basis, and we work for good or for bad. I think at the end of the day, we'll find out that it was mostly for good with respect to the broad branding of flex and outsourcing office space and workplaces as a service, as Laurent has patented or trademarked. Those brands and the willingness of companies to embrace it, and now with employees demanding it, that's it. It's all came together. And so that's what we're most excited about, is setting up these newer, nicer facilities as we, refresh our existing portfolio and add to it and supply this moving forward. Super exciting.
So what was the trigger to move out of Northern California, or not move out of, but in addition to expand into other markets? And will you look to do multiple locations, or are you okay with one in a market?
We prefer to cluster. We always have. And so it's really a case of getting into the market, getting established and getting going. Human resources, our friends over at Google, leads, a lead for San Francisco is often a lead for for those of you that know the San Francisco Bay Area, it's a lead for San Mateo. It's a lead for Walnut Creek. They just happen to go to the San Francisco landing page and then realized, oh, our employee lives out in the suburbs. It's no different than in Vegas. It's going to be no different in Phoenix. It's like, oh, I really wanted to be in Scottsdale, or I really wanted to be in Tempe, or I didn't, So anyway, so eventually we'll want to expand those. We'll do those on a case by case. So two reasons we went into those external markets. One is a landlord partner that believes in us and made the negotiation a win-win. Came to us and said, we want flex in our space. We'd like you to be the operator, and worked out a deal. And the other is, in this current window, the economics in some markets outside of the San Francisco Bay Area simply pencil better.
Yeah.
The asking rates in some markets here in our backyard haven't quite matched up with a ramp up reality.
Yeah.
and I think that's where we'll have to see if that reality check, the pressure on that reality check is tenant improvement costs. But if a landlord can do it at X rent in other markets, the landlords can do it in this market at X rents. It just, that's just going to be, they're going to have to readjust. There's going to be some readjustment for those of you that have, 401ks or outside investments in real estate. It's going to be a recalibration, in my opinion. Sorry, there's a little bit of overvaluation in some space. Flight to quality, yes. But you can't have 25 million square feet of vacant sublease space and direct space in a major market and not expecting at some point the next thing that breaks is price. And who's going to make them break them is the lenders, right?
Yeah. So you, speaking of flight to quality, you're mostly in Class A buildings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all of our new stuff's Class A, but we don't go out and race out. We don't want to be, I don't want to speak for what we don't want to do, because really it comes down to the deal and the partnership and the risk. We don't race out to be in trophy buildings, right? I'm really good with an A- building. I'm good with an A building, an A- building. B+, you got to be careful, depending upon what the whole economics of the situation, the actual location and things like that. You're going to have a flight to quality when you have high vacancy rates, as typical. So no, I mean, we definitely want to be in A buildings and nice buildings.
And then typical floor plan, what are you looking at as you expand in terms of square feet?
We've done as small as 10, which we don't love, but we'll do those, and those become more doable in this day and age because of the drive in virtual office and meeting rooms. Meeting rooms are coming back pretty big.
Yeah.
I think out here in the Bay Area, we're probably one of the last to fully recover on the meeting room side, because of the change in population and usage and things like that. But that's coming back. But virtual office, now 31% of our revenue stream, you can run out of a slightly smaller footprint and make the economics work really well. So for those out there that might listen to this in the future, that your virtual office business is not something, I know us industry veterans have talked about it for years and years, and I know you probably have done some, and there's some people out there. My partner Keith would be a better one to talk to about that.
Okay, I'm gonna have to hit Keith up when he's not hiking around Hawaii or wherever he's.
Yeah, or he did the Yosemite, he did the John Muir Trail this summer.
Yeah, I mean,
unbelievable. Was out there. I think he was out there for 17 days or 18 days, or maybe. And Keith, if you hear this, if you're there for 20, I'm not trying to shortchange you.
Yeah,
it was a walkabout, in my opinion. I was like, oh boy,
totally.
if the door opens to the outside, I'm camping, right? If the window slides open, I'm camping. That's it. That's been known for years. All my friends know that's Scott's idea of camping, right? Anyway, he did the real deal. So great. But really, I think 12 to 14,000, 15,000 feet. I mean, that's really
okay. So you're not going to 20 yet.
No, and I don't think we will, because in most markets that we operate in, the rent becomes a much higher risk when you go to 20. If I can keep a 15,000, 90% full, I'm good.
Yep.
Whereas if I keep a 20,000 foot, 85% full or 80% full, I'm probably chasing my tail and doing a lot of turnover. I know in other markets, I have some good friends down in Texas, and 20 is their standard. That's great, but it works when you're paying $25 or $30 for a square foot for space. The numbers just work there, whereas they don't work when you're paying 40, 50, $60 a foot. Well, at least in our opinion, in our risk tolerance, right? We're a risk averse company. We consider ourselves an operator, and we consider ourselves a good operator. But we really are also, risk averse, and we always have been. I think that's why Laurent and I have been successful in leading our company together, is that his and my risk tolerance, and that extrapolates into how we handle, because we do have outside money. You're well aware that we've raised 2 rounds of capital over our history, one of which was in 2019. By the way, if Laurent and Scott are raising money, you can expect something really weird to happen, because our first one was in 07.
Oh God, yeah. Buckle up.
The next one is 19 going into 20. So the good news about the 19 capital raise is we'd only placed about 25% of it prior to COVID. And we just obviously had the privilege and pleasure to slam on the brakes and just take a time out for a year and let 2020 unfold. And we had capital on the sidelines, and it was a great feeling to be in, to know that we were able to preserve that investor money and capitalize when the opportunities come. And thus now we're getting some great opportunities. So we, as a company, did take in outside capital. It's not massive relative to some fund rounds that you read about. But for us, it's in our comfort zone. It's in our risk zone. It's in our wheelhouse of what we like to do.
Yeah, I love the conversation, which is part of what you were having on stage at the conference, is you have to do deals that line up with where you want to put the risk.
Yeah.
Like the guys at Kiln who are doing those huge build outs, and they raise the money to pay for the build out, but they will do kind of the below market lease to get through that. It's an interesting.
Yeah, they put in their own TIs. We don't spend $1 on TIs. It's
right.
really not. It's not, it's for, I mean, if we spend one, it's, the dollar that Scott goes over when he manages $110 square foot budget and he goes to $111.49. And I hear about it from my CEO and my board because there's no value in it. There's no return on that. It's just great.
You don't own it.
You bought some faucets and some lights that had to be in anyway. It's like great. So.
Yep. Okay. So, I think you said, you run a pretty good company, you raised some capital. I think you run a great company. You've been successful. You made it through COVID. And also you have a great team and a great culture. And you've maintained that. I'm sure there have been some ups and downs through the years. You've been doing that for a long time. So I feel like I said, we have to pick some other topics to do more episodes on, but I want to talk about kind of your team and as you're growing, what does it look like? Let's start with the location level. How do you staff your location level? And then I want to take it up a notch. I think there are a lot of operators out there, I know there are, who are struggling with this. How do I grow and scale? What does that look like? And how do I manage that, financially? So I would just love to hear a little bit about what your structure looks like, and then maybe, take a step back to the early days and how did you manage to, make the trade-off? Because you mentioned being risk averse and this business is paying mortgages and, you guys are all in, right? So yeah, talk about that a little bit.
So the staffing structure is at beginning at the center level because our portfolio has some centers with slightly different physical size and by extension, number of people, number of virtual plans. We staff according to the needs of the specific location. We do have a small handful of locations running with one person locally with an area manager above them that will fill in the event of sickness. And we have rovers in the Bay Area. We have rovers in Sacramento. So we have some part-time people that can go fill in. But typically there's a community coordinator and a community manager on site. And then the real busy locations will have a third person, either full-time or part-time, depending upon the needs. And sometimes that third person's entire responsibility is to sort mail. Believe it or not, good old-fashioned mail sorting, mail stuffing, mail forwarding, mail scanning, all of the different plans that we offer, whether it's electronic through Sphere Mail, which has become super, super popular and will continue to boom. So the community coordinator then, runs the front reception meeting rooms and does that along with the community manager. And then the community manager works with the area manager, the managing partner on sales, staff management, and doing all of the other things that aren't getting done by the others. So it's a tier there. And as I mentioned to you earlier, when we were talking, is clustering is important to us because of staffing.
Can't have rovers without a cluster.
Pleasant Hill can come to Walnut Creek can go to Oakland, San Francisco.
And they know all the operating procedures and they know how to greet members and yeah.
We use Yardi Cube everywhere, which is one of our most amazing trusted partners that we've been with them.
I was going to say, right.
Back when, for those of you out there in the industry land that know Victor and Dale's since sold out and Victor's still with Yardi and it was one of the principals there. But no, we grew up with them, and honestly, the sale to Yardi, I think, was a fabulous move for everyone involved, and especially those of us on the end user side, because we do have the same systems and processes in every location. Subtle differences, of course. Everything takes on a local flair. I think that's kind of also who we are. Creating a culture is that somebody might have a localized idea. And they do it and they implement it, and then the area manager will get wind of it, and our managing partners and managing directors. Managing partner has some equity, managing director doesn't have equity at this time. So we have a couple of those as our structure has evolved over the years. And then they have their own group, right? And so they share best practices, and we have a real sharing culture. I mean, our core value is we care, right? We care about everybody. We care about our employees and our partners and our vendors and our customers. But the team itself creates a culture of sharing and collaboration that it's like, hey, I've got a holiday flyer that we're going to be closed on Thursday and Friday of Thanksgiving. If you want to use mine and just put your location or whatever your little subtle twist is,
Yeah.
some locations will close at 2, some will close at 1. But we have some standardizations, and so you don't have to reinvent it 20 times, right? It's done. And it doesn't come from the centralized corporate. Right? It's done more at the ground level, right? Some of that stuff is.
So what
To
is
go
your
further,
go up a level and
to go further with how we're structured, and this evolved. This didn't happen overnight. We have a separate finance team. We have a separate marketing team. So the marketing team has a certain number of dedicated staff that run our website. They run our pay-per-click. They work with any outsourced partners on things they don't do. Like, I think they set up the Trust Pilot. They work with Yelp. They work with Google, and they work with Google, and they work with Google, and they still work with Google. Anyway, that's pretty much the lifeblood of this industry. For those of you that are aware of that, and that's fortunately an area that doesn't come across my desk very often. So I'm pretty excited about that. We have a dedicated IT team. We have two dedicated IT people, one that primarily focuses on high level, which is Felton, our IT director. And
I think everybody listening, that's like their dream state to have an in-house IT guy who can just do all the things.
And then there's a guy that is his assistant, but that really specializes on the voice side. And for those of you that know or don't know, Klaviyo is our sister company, and it's a very phone intensive operation over there. And so he specializes in running that telecom solution along with the outsourced partners that they provide phone answering to that are not even the Pacific portfolio, as well as the entire Pacific portfolio. So they're very busy up there. It's mostly headquartered in Sacramento, but given COVID, we're even a little more decentralized that now. We've got totally remote technology, and people can work from their homes and do that. But we still bring a small team in on a daily basis as best we can. It's a little bit better for management, but we found that we had to adjust, right? There were people that you could find human capital that was willing to do it from home, but wasn't willing to come to an office. During COVID, that was obvious. As COVID has started to depart us in its past form, we've been flexible with some continuing to do that. The labor markets are tight. Everyone knows that. And so you've got to pick your battles. Obviously, on site in the centers, we need staff, right?
That's what
we do. We create the other thing that like you and I were kicking around is what's the same or what's changed or something about looking backwards. Well, what's changed is hospitality. Back in the day, people were just looking for a private little room to get out of, and it was fun to talk about the football game at the water cooler, and that actually really was the water cooler back in the day with the 5-gallon bottle in it. I want to date myself with 8-track tapes and all. But people really, I think, and especially now and moving forward, they really are re-engaging in the social side. There's some folks that have let that part of their life maybe struggle a little more or suffer a little more than I don't want to say that they should have. It's just it happened. And we provide some awesome. I mean, we're providing events. I house, as you know, in the Walnut Creek location, and they are doing them almost every other week. Some bigger, some smaller. But I think it's interesting because I had even told my manager, "Are we doing too many of these?" And
I was gonna say, when does the CFO jump in and wonder?
She goes, you know what? Even if 5 people come, and the next time 20 people come, those 5 people, it makes their day, makes their week, and they look forward to it, and they come. And we can't time how often we're going to have a lot of people in or a few people in, because there's still this tremendous amount of flexibility and fluidity amongst the workforce as to when they're coming to the office. And when it's not Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are busy, it's really still hit and miss. And it's not every day is busy or every day is slow. And some locations busier than others. And just like any portfolio or anything. So, she said, no, she said, we're going to keep doing it. And they, the good news about doing that, they reuse things, right? They don't, it's not, they don't cater in a bunch of, they're really smart about how they drive the events and with food and beverage and make sure things are resealable and obviously some things are perishable and bought for the specific event, but they try and gauge kind of what they'll need.
Yeah.
If you run out, you should have come sooner.
And your annual football pool.
Absolutely.
Which can be done virtually.
Just these things. I know these things go into an archive, but I lost last night's Thursday night football game. So frustrating. I always choose I almost always choose the home team on Thursdays, right? It's a short week on the road for the road team.
Right. Right.
Sunday, and they've only got 3 days. And the Washington Red, it was an absolutely awful game. The NFL really needs to do better on Thursday nights. Anyway, that's that. We could go down that rabbit hole, and people would be like, "I thought this was a flex like chat, and they're talking about football."
Not football. And
Go
football.
49ers. I'll interject that.
So, okay. So marketing, finance, IT, anything we're missing?
Yeah, so they sit on top and support the entire portfolio, and in some cases, they work remotely. They work, they'll come into the staff and things like that. IT obviously comes in a little bit more than marketing does, onto the staff into the locations. But we evolved here, and so I think you wanted me to sort of say, for those that are struggling to figure out how to staff. When we first started, Laurent was finance. And we had an accountant, and then he ran the books, and we got a bookkeeper. He didn't do books; he was too valuable as we were getting a startup going. So we had a bookkeeper, and then we had a full-time bookkeeper, Mark, the great Mark.
So who did marketing in the early days?
Laurent.
Okay.
Laurent was the original keyword guru that put the Excel spreadsheets together with the keywords and figured all that out. So Laurent ran the finance early and the marketing early. He still does. I run the finance more day to day now and month to month. We have weekly calls where he's in and he sees his reports. And then certainly, as I always say, and I'm sure he'll listen to this, I started to have my annual audit in the first quarter of the year when we're doing tax returns, and he goes through and sort of checks my work. It's sort of like, he doesn't not look at it throughout the year. Don't get me wrong. For those of you out there, it's not that case, but he's allowed that to be something that I'm more responsible for. So I've got IT, HR, and finance that are IT and HR are really under me. And then finance we share, but really I run day to day and he runs it. He's the official CFO of the company, and both by education and by experience and knowledge, that should be his role. So, and then as the CEO, he oversees marketing, and then he oversees strategy, right? And he does most of the landlord negotiations he's in charge of, because he's just an incredible negotiator. He's an incredible visionary, and his background is being in the asset manager's shoes, working for corporate America at Sun Microsystems and HP when he ran real estate. He understood what things looked at from a purely financial and non-emotional manner, what makes sense and what doesn't. And that's what drives deals. Some people, take your emotion out of a deal, put it on the table. It's a math problem that's driven by risk, reward, your ability. What can you lose? What can you put in? What are you willing to put in? And what are you willing to put in and never see again? That's called risk. And so Laurent's really good at that, and he drives that. And then he works obviously on our boards with our investors and drives those presentations and reports and stuff like that to them as well.
So
that's it. We evolved. I answered phones when I first got into this business at the front desk, and that's the honest truth. That's how you know what goes on in your business. Is just sometimes you start there, and then suddenly you
tell me about the thought process, because you two are fiscally responsible, and you refer to yourself as risk averse. When you were on the edge of, like, when you're thinking about, okay, we need to add a marketing person, or we need to add the IT person, like, are you so far into that pain that you can't take it anymore and there's budget for it? Or are you like getting a little out over your skis to make that hire and hope it's the right decision?
Well, it's a good question, but I think that I'm going to answer that. There has to be a budget. How do we pay for it? That's always part of the question. How do we pay for it? And the temptation in this business at a scale of 20, actually even a scale at 5, and maybe even 3. I know we're doing this for ourselves to catch up, but we're also sharing our knowledge here. The temptation is to say, well, it's only $100 a month for each location, right? Or it's only and now we got 20 locations, so now it's only $300 a month to hire a new marketing person. For like, oh, that's not that bad. Well, time out. Be real careful about that strategy. Because it's been in our thinking, but no, it's like, that's not how it works. There has to be a more, we really need to drive, more search engine optimization. Okay. Do we have in-house talent that can do it? Yes, but they're spread thin. Okay. What does an outside partner look like? What does a part-time consultant look like that does that as a specialty? Okay. Well, this is what that costs for this many hours or this much work or whatever it is. And then and I can speak to this more on the IT side. Felton used to be our outsourced IT partner, right? He used to work for a company that supported us, right?
So
And then
not
came
full
the day when
time.
I had
Right. So that was a
no, then came the day
fractional.
when yeah. So then came the day when I had to call the owner of that company and say, "Hey, I need to ask your permission. I'd like to hire Felton full time." And it was when it happened to be a client that was in one of our locations that we had done a lot of work with, and they understood, and it was sort of like this is a good move for him, and it'd never be a win-win. But that's it. We've used a lot of outsourced partners, and then bring in-house, and so I think that's the same way our marketing team evolved, and the business tells you where the pressure points are, right? That's part of being a leader, is understanding where your pressure points are. Your employees will give you feedback, or it's like, hey, we're buried. But I think one of the things that Laurent and I are really proud of is we're really efficient. I mean, we have 3 finance people that run 20 locations in our investment company books, and our do the cloud stuff, and that's like 3.5 and stuff. And the IT is 2 people. Now, part of that is tools. Part of that is having really, really, really good tools and really, really good processes. And and Laurent is a process, non-emotional process, data-driven CEO, and he has set up a lot of the tools along the way, and he continues to evolve them. He continues to bring us new ones. He's much better at that than I am. I'm more, I think I'm a little more of the gregarious people person on some of our journeys. But we work well together, and we each have our strengths and skills. But Laurent is very process driven, and teaches all of us how to be process driven in our responsibilities. Made me a much better COO, understanding how to, don't you, otherwise you're just sticking your finger in the dam all the time, right? Is there
But
a
I think
process?
it's hard to be process driven, especially for the like entrepreneurial, CEO that likes the big picture. And that's one of the things I think I admire about your team is, you've had some success. It could be tempting to, kind of chase some squirrels or get a little too far out over your skis. And you guys are really, really focused on like you 80/20 the heck out of your business, right? Like, what you need to focus on. You put
Yeah,
systems in place. You've got your weekly marketing, and you
we do.
focus. You really like your virtual office. Like, that's big because you just relentlessly focus on growing it. And I think there are so many that is like, one of the things I always share, your website as an example of, look at these guys, model, just do what they do on the outside, but on the inside, you have metrics, you're tracking, like everybody's looking at those numbers and trying to grow those numbers.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
so we have weekly meetings for the functionals. The IT has a call, the finance has a call, marketing has a call, the area managers and our managing partners and managing directors, they work with their teams, and I don't meddle in that too much unless necessary. So you let each silo work, and then we have an extended executive management group meeting once a month, and we get together, and our Jacob, from our finance team, presents us a report a quarter, or a report of a month, not a report a quarter. Sorry, and we work on occupancy, we work on BOs, we work on pricing, and when we're in those reports, it is the time to really focus on any subtle shifts or adjustments, and then we leave those with action items. Right, we'll come back in 4 weeks with those action items, and that's how you evolve pricing. That's how you evolve product. That's how you evolve process. It's like, we've been doing this at this price. It's taking the demand of it's really picking up, and then sometimes Laurent will direct a handful of locations to manually track a certain task for a month or a week or whatever it is he wants to know, and he'll do that, and he collects that data, and he goes through it. And I remember there was one time where there was a manager that was complaining about the virtual office stuff, and it's like, oh, that client's just so annoying and blah, blah, blah. And what we found out was, when we had like 3 annoying clients, and we had like 300 that we never even talked to, right?
Never hear from. Yeah.
It's like, okay, sorry, the three people are yelling and screaming, deal with it. That's called life, right? That's just say, baby, that's life. Not everybody's going to be satisfied 100% of the time, but if 297 of them are fine and sending you checks and getting services delivered to them, that's a win. That's data that takes out the emotion.
Yep. Totally. Right. So the focus, the systems, and use that to try to take the emotion out to run the business.
You have to.
And talk a little bit about, you just mentioned so this was your annual, your pack day, which is, get off site. And you also do quarterly meetings. Can you just talk like a little bit about how that plays into your culture?
So I'll start with the quarterlies, and then I'll go up to the crescendo, which is the pack day annually. So quarterly, we get the team together, and that's usually the managers, the managing partners, and the functionals get together somewhere in the region in person, and we have an agenda, and we'll have different topics, and those topics will vary. There'll be training, but a lot of it, again, this comes from Laurent's office, is when we're together, he wants us to collaborate. He wants us to break out into teams. He wants us to take advantage of being together and thinking, not just one way listening, which, to be honest, a lot of it now you can do on Zoom when it's just one way, top down, talk. So it's a lot of that's breakout, little, break into groups of 3 or break into down a scenario or something that we do. So those are the quarterly management meetings. And then of course you have lunch and you have social time, and you get to see everybody, right? Everybody at the management level gets to get together and bond. And then in the fall, we close the office on Columbus last Indigenous People Day. And we bring everybody together to an event, and we fly, Vegas flew in, and Reno drives over the hill, and everybody gets together. We close the offices. There is no mail that day, and we have an event. And this year, as we started off at the top of the podcast, we were in the Livermore wine country, and we had a presentation that Laurent and the whole team put, it's just, it was almost a gig file for this PowerPoint, super fun. And we share everything we did looking back, and we share everything we see moving forward, and we celebrate our wins, and we celebrate our new locations, and we celebrate our people, and we celebrate all the, the things that we've done. And really what we do is we also inform. You work in downtown Sacramento, and you don't really know what the entire vision of the company is, or you don't really get a feel for it. And so we go through the presentation that starts off in the morning around 9:30, and it goes till just before noon. And and we end by letting everybody know we care, right? That's our core value, is we care. And we try to not talk it once a year. We try to live it and walk it. And really, I think our employees and our culture will tell you whether or not that's been successful. And you've been part of us back in our working together days, and I think you felt it when you were there. And I feel pretty good about it. But really, it's a case of, if you run into people that work for us, you have to ask them. I don't think it's coming to my office or like, yeah, we love yourselves. But we've had I think relative to the industry, we've had minimal turnover. We have people stay with us a pretty long time, and we've had people return to us, and more than one. We have many anecdotes.
I love that.
And we also have siblings that work for us, and we have parents and children that work for us. So I think that speaks pretty highly of if you worked in a toxic environment, I don't think you'd bring your kid into it. And if you worked in a toxic environment, I don't think you'd bring your sibling into it, unless you didn't like your sibling and you want to get your kid in there, and then you're going to bail out. But that's not been the case. So
yeah. Well,
anyway,
it's a huge commitment, right? It's a huge time commitment for the management team.
It's huge time and money. It's an investment that we feel pays. It's okay. Pack Day is a massive investment in time, the amount of hours that go into the presentation and the preparation, and then the capital that it takes to put it on. It is so rewarding to have everybody in the room and talking and meeting, and IT gets to meet people they haven't seen, in marketing especially, because they don't get out as much. They get to meet everybody, all these people that you've emailed and Zoomed with.
Right
there you are. And as we mentioned, we did this Pinot's palette. Everybody's painting, sitting next to each other, drinking a little bit of wine, having a good time, just really enjoying and celebrating, the opportunity to be together and be, it's we make work better, and making work better is making work with people and having serendipity and all that. So, yeah.
And feeling a part of something bigger.
One other thing I want to interject in,
Yeah.
and then I meant to say earlier, and then I was just about to say it in that last segment, is you were talking about the investment in Pack Day. When we first talked about, like, Laurent and I and you and I and everything like this, I got to tell everybody out there, make the investment to go to the industry conferences. The
no.
Global Works, I met Laurent at the Global Workspace Association
Oh,
in
did you
2000, in
really?
2001, right after 9/11. In September of 2001 is when we met. We dated for 2 years. He moved, he was just getting out of Sun Microsystems. He bought a business that housed foreign exchange students in San Francisco. And so he moved into the San Mateo location. We got to know him. We looked at a bunch of deals and we toured around
Wait,
and we just kind of got to.
did you run the San Mateo? Was it you ran the
Yeah, I
first
had a couple
location?
locations prior to partnering with
That's what I was
Laurent.
trying to remember about your
Yeah,
origin.
I was in the business, 7, 8 years before that, just doing
Okay.
2 locations and through .com. Honestly, but I don't think I was very genius, and it was very economically lucrative to be in flex space. And during the .com boom, people just would pay almost anything for space. But then we went through the .com pullback, and it was time to regroup and create a real business. In my opinion, I mean, we had a real business before, but it was way out of equilibrium. And that goes back to what I was saying about buying long and selling short. Well, I was buying long on, at $30 a foot.
You're
the
getting
market
a little
went
lucky. Yeah.
yeah. So it was all good. Sometimes you get a little lucky, but I've been through the other cycles too.
Okay, so what was Laurent doing at the conference?
He was evaluating the business. He had already toured us and was had told us he might want an office space. Well, when I went to his home, in his basement, he has his office down in his basement in the Bay Area, which not everybody has basements in the Bay Area. But his house was on a hill. So
I was going to say, I don't know anyone.
Too much detail.
So,
but anyway, he had a map. He had a map of the San Francisco Bay Area on the wall, and he had all these dots of every HQ, every Regis, every independent. He'd been everywhere. So he had done his research, right? He had gone out and he had gone all the way around to every location to really understand the flex market. And when he was at Sun Microsystems, he had brought, you'd have to ask him exactly what the name of the program was, but basically working in the more remote locations and
yep.
Being able to be flexible. And so he was one of the originators of that. And then it was time, his son went through its transition in the 01 and then into the early 2000s. Laurent escaped that. And he got tired of, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but my recollection is he was tired of traveling, missing his kids' soccer games, and always being on an airplane. And he wanted to, in an entrepreneurial vein, and he wanted to give it a shot. And so having come from running my locations earlier in my career, and then going through the .com bust, and realizing there were some great opportunities out there to stay in this business, I realized that really to do what I needed to do to make a career of it versus just, sort of an early, dabbling in it early, was I needed somebody with a different skill set, and happened to find Laurent, who had the opposite skill set. Now, come to find out, we're two youngest children. So early on, we had our little squabbles and, both took on our way. And he was more used to working at 9 o'clock at night than I was. I was the entrepreneurial flavor, but I wasn't going to work 20 hours a day. And just those of you that know me, just know that's part of my personality. So, but we found that balance. We worked through the earlier years, and found success and found our formula and found our niche, and the rest is history. It's been an incredible journey, and I really look forward
continue this, make sure we don't leave this out. You met Laurent at the GWA conference, and then in 2001, and then I must have met you at Juicy in 2012.
Somewhere in there. I was going to finish up on that thought that's how you and I met. I mean, we would know each other now anyway, just due to the industry. But that was, not only did we meet,
totally not the same. I mean, we would know.
We were standing in the back of the room observing, and you just looked at me and walked right up, put your hand out, and said, "I'm Jamie Russo."
Well, I think Liz was trying to do some sort of yoga session or something, like way back in the day, and you and I were like,
yeah, okay, that might have been part of it. But I was in the back of the room going, I don't know if this is totally my cup of tea, but I'm having fun. Anyway, where
that
were
was
we?
So serendipitous.
Were we in Austin, Texas? That was so fun. We were in Kansas City. I met you in Kansas City.
Really?
I thought it was Kansas City.
It might have been. I mean, it was my first one, I think.
Oh, maybe it was.
I don't remember. Whatever. I can never remember.
Either it was one or it was my first or second one. I don't remember which one. Anyway, and then as you remember, we learned you were from Chicago. You had just moved to the Bay Area. Your husband had a biotech job out there.
Yeah.
And
I knew no one. You might have been the first.
Wait a minute. You got to meet my partners. You got to meet my people. And so I brought you back, and you met Becky and Laurent. And next thing we know, we're doing Interspace Palo Alto right there with in the same facility. So that was a great journey, and that was a great run. And as we both know, that lease ended right as COVID was getting going, and unfortunately we had to close that down. But in some respects, the lease ending was probably a blessing with respect to what that particular
That could
market
have
was
been a
going to
wild
end up.
ride. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I
So
mean,
both industry conferences, Juicy and GWA, each of the respective groups, they are different. There are some similarities, but what's the same is the ability to network with people that are trying to learn and share. And then, I've always, more so lately, I've felt like I give back more than but I still get a lot out of it. There's still some incredible relationships and so much fun. But to think that it equaled dollars and cents, and I talk to some people that just say, well, I just couldn't justify it. Well, there's one thing if you truly can't afford it. I get, there's priorities in life where the dollars have to go. I get that. But if you reach a point where there are some discretionary resources available and you're really contemplating, I can't encourage you enough to go network, learn others. And these will be people that you will call, and these will be people that you will potentially partner with. These will be people that will turn you on to other people, whether it's a broker, a landlord, a vendor, or something that will help you in your business journey. And the other thing, after all these years, I don't know if there's an industry with better people. I don't know what it is about our little space in this slice of this great world that we all are walking this journey in, but there's something about flex people that they're just cool. They're just really good people.
They're super cool and super fun and still super smart and super motivated and all the things you want.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, okay, we're going to end it there. I have to go to another podcast. Scott, we're going to have you back on. I have many other topics to dig into, or Keith.
This was so fun. I think for about a year and a half, I just was like in survival mode, dealing with the fires at the house meetings, sort of like in our business, and all the energies and Zooms with landlords and Zooms with employees and Zooms with all the different outside sources that we had to consult with as we navigated through that. And now honestly, I have a little bounce in my step, and it's super, super fun. It was so great to see everybody in Texas at the conference. So great to do this with you, and would love to again anytime soon. Certainly, let's not go 7 years. I mean, let's not go 7 years.
Well,
that's embarrassing for both of us.
Totally. And because you guys run an incredible shop and you have so much to give. And so I appreciate, because I know even if you have a little bounce in your step and feel like, picking your head up and giving back, that's what you're doing. And thank you for sharing your experience and your insight. Very much appreciated.
If people reach out to you to find me, you can always turn them on to me, and I'll share whatever I can.
I'll send them along.
Take care.
Scott.